Please, just play along. The words tumbled out of my mouth as I grabbed the tall stranger's face and pressed my lips to his. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst right there in the middle of that soul cafe. What the, he started to say against my mouth, but I cut him off. There's a man who's been following me for weeks. Please, just, please. I could feel every pair of eyes in the cafe burning into us. A Nigerian woman kissing a Korean businessman wasn't exactly subtle, but subtle had stopped being an option the moment my stalker walked through that glass door. The stranger's body went rigid for half a second, then his arms came around my waist. Professional. Protective. Like he'd done this before. I've got you, he whispered, and something in his voice made my racing pulse slow just enough to think clearly again. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna, where stories like this reveal the secrets families try to bury. The man who'd been haunting my steps for 3 weeks stood frozen by the entrance. His face twisted with something between rage and disbelief. For a moment, I thought he might actually approach us anyway. But the stranger, my temporary savior, lifted his head and looked directly at my stalker. Not confused. Not surprised. Knowing. You can let go now, I whispered, suddenly aware that every conversation in the cafe had stopped. The Ajumma behind the counter was staring openly. 2 businessmen had their phones out. Not yet, he said quietly. His English was perfect, with just the slightest accent that made my stomach do weird flips. Give him time to leave. I risked a glance over his shoulder. My stalker was backing toward the door, his eyes never leaving us. The look on his face promised this wasn't over. Thank you, I breathed as the door chimed shut behind him. The stranger's hands lingered on my waist for just a moment longer than necessary. When he finally stepped back, I got my first real look at him. Expensive suit. Confidence that came from never having to ask for anything twice. The kind of watch that cost more than most people's cars. You're safe now, Miss Williams. The words hit me like ice water. I'd never told him my name. How do you, my voice caught in my throat. How do you know my name? His smile was perfect. Practiced. The kind of smile that graced magazine covers and boardroom meetings. But it didn't reach his eyes. Seoul is smaller than you think, he said, straightening his tie. Especially in certain circles. My mouth went dry. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too warm. Every face around us seemed threatening now. What circles? I managed to ask. He extended his hand like we were meeting at a business conference instead of recovering from an emergency makeout session. June, he said simply. And you're Asha Williams. You've been in Seoul for, 2 months now? I didn't take his hand. Couldn't. Because if he knew how long I'd been here, if he knew my full name, then he knew things about me that strangers shouldn't know. I should go, I said, grabbing my bag from the table where I'd abandoned it. Wait. His voice was gentle but firm. You're still shaking. I looked down at my hands. He was right. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me unsteady and raw. Let me buy you coffee. Real coffee, not whatever you were drinking before. He gestured to my untouched Americano. You look like you could use something stronger. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run. Strange men who knew my name were exactly what I'd come to Seoul to avoid. But there was something about the way he'd stepped in without question. The way he'd positioned himself between me and danger without hesitation. And the way he was looking at me now, like I was someone worth protecting. One coffee, I heard myself say. But somewhere public. Of course. That smile again, warmer this time. I know a place. As he guided me toward the counter, his hand barely touching my elbow, I caught my reflection in the cafe window. I looked like a woman who'd just been kissed by a stranger to escape a stalker. I had no idea I was looking at a woman who just walked into something far more dangerous than anything she was running from. 5 years ago, my father's voice echoed through our Lagos office with the kind of pride that made my chest swell. "Asha, look at this," he said, spreading the contracts across his mahogany desk. Williams Tech Solutions just landed the biggest government contract in Nigerian history. I remember running my fingers over the letterhead, feeling the weight of quality paper beneath my palms. We'd built something real. Something lasting. "Papa, you did it," I whispered, watching him beam with satisfaction. "We did it, my daughter. This family, we don't just survive. We thrive." The memory felt like touching broken glass now, sitting across from June in this upscale Seoul cafe. He'd chosen a place where conversations happened in hushed tones and every table had enough space for secrets. "You seem far away," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with methodical precision. "Just thinking about home," I replied, watching his movements. Everything about him was controlled, measured. Like he was used to being watched. "Nigeria?" The way he said it made me pause. Not like someone guessing, but like someone confirming what he already knew. "Lagos, specifically. My family had a business there." "Had?" I met his eyes across the table. They were dark, intelligent, and surprisingly gentle for someone who carried himself like he owned half the city. "It was acquired. Against our will." Something flickered across his face. Too quick to identify, but there nonetheless. "I'm sorry. That must have been difficult." "Difficult?" I almost laughed. That's a very polite way to put it. The server approached our table with the kind of deference that told me exactly what kind of man June was. The bow, the careful attention to his preferences, the way other patrons glanced our way with recognition. "Sir, your usual table upstairs is available if you'd prefer privacy," the young man said in heavily accented English. "We're fine here, thank you." But June's answer came too quickly. Like he was making a point of staying visible, staying public. Smart man. I didn't trust him either. "You come here often?" I asked after the server retreated. "Often enough that they know my order." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You're very direct." "It's refreshing. Nigerian women don't have time for games. And Korean men appreciate efficiency." There it was again. That sense that we were having two conversations at once. The surface-level exchange and something deeper, more dangerous. "What do you do, June?" I asked, pulling out my phone to check the time. "Besides rescue random women from stalkers?" "I work in business development. Acquisitions, mostly." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Acquisitions?" "Companies that are struggling. We help them find new paths forward." The words hung between us like smoke. I thought about my father's face the day the lawyers came. The way his hands shook as he read through the documents. "And if they don't want your help?" June's smile was diplomatic. Professional. The kind that revealed nothing while promising everything. Most companies eventually see the wisdom in collaboration over competition. Most companies. Eventually. I studied his face, looking for cracks in that perfect composure. There had to be something real underneath all that polish. What about the ones that don't? The ones that fight back? For the first time since we'd sat down, June looked uncomfortable. He shifted in his chair, glanced toward the window. "Business is rarely personal, Miss Williams. Though I suspect you understand that better than most." "Why would you suspect that?" "Because you're here. In Seoul. Alone. Building something new." The observation was too accurate, too informed. I set my cup down harder than necessary. "How do you know what I'm building?" I pay attention to remarkable women. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. The honesty in his voice surprised me. For a moment, the corporate mask slipped, and I saw something vulnerable underneath. Why did you help me today? I asked softly. June was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in slow circles on the table. Because some things are more important than staying uninvolved. Even with strangers. Especially with strangers who aren't really strangers. My pulse quickened. What does that mean? It means Seoul is full of connected people, Miss Williams. Your reputation precedes you. My reputation? Brilliant. Determined. Uncompromising when it comes to justice. The words should have been flattering. Instead, they felt like a warning. Justice is a luxury most people can't afford, I said carefully. But you're not most people. No, I'm not. We sat in silence, the weight of unspoken things settling between us like fog. Around us, the cafe hummed with afternoon energy. Business meetings, casual dates, students with laptops. Normal people living normal lives. I envied them their simplicity. I should probably go, I said, reaching for my purse. Of course. But before you do. June pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. Heavy paper, minimalist design. In case you need anything. Seoul can be overwhelming for newcomers. I took the card, my fingers brushing his briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through my system. Jun Min-ho, I read aloud. CEO, Seoul Industries. The words hit me like a physical blow. The room tilted, and I had to grip the table to steady myself. Seoul Industries. The same name that had been stamped on every document that destroyed my family. The same logo that had been burned into my memory for 5 years. Miss Williams? Are you all right? June's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I stared at the card in my hands, reading the company name over and over, hoping I was wrong. But I wasn't wrong. I was looking at the business card of the man whose company had murdered my father as surely as if they'd put a gun to his head. And I'd kissed him. The day they came for us, my father was wearing his lucky tie. The blue one with tiny gold patterns that I'd given him for his birthday 3 years earlier. Asha, come see this, he called from his office window, his voice bright with excitement. The sunrise looks like it's setting the whole city on fire. I padded across the cool marble floor in my slippers, still holding my morning tea. Our Lagos office building was his pride and joy. 23 floors of gleaming success that he'd built from nothing. Beautiful morning for beautiful news, Papa, I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Indeed, my daughter. Today we signed the expansion contract with the Telecommunications Ministry. Williams Tech Solutions will be in every major city by Christmas. The memory of his smile still cut like a blade. He'd had no idea that 3 floors below, a team of lawyers was already in the lobby, briefcases full of acquisition papers and legal threats. I stared at June's business card now, my hands trembling with rage that had been building for 5 years. Seoul Industries. The corporate monster that had swallowed my family whole. Miss Williams? June's voice seemed to come from very far away. You look pale. Should I call someone? I lifted my eyes to meet his, and for the first time since we'd sat down, I let him see exactly who I was. You son of a bitch. The cafe around us seemed to hold its breath. June's face went completely still, all that practiced charm evaporating in an instant. I beg your pardon? Seoul Industries. I held up his business card like evidence in a trial. The company that destroyed Williams Tech Solutions 5 years ago. The company that killed my father. Understanding dawned across his features like a slow-motion car crash. His mouth opened, then closed. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Williams Tech Solutions. You're that Williams. Surprised? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Did you think I came to Seoul for the tourist attractions? Miss Williams, please sit down. Let me explain. Explain what? How your company's hostile takeover gave my father a heart attack. How you systematically destroyed every contract we had until we had nothing left. June rose slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. Around us, other patrons were starting to stare, but I was beyond caring about their comfort. It wasn't personal, he said quietly. It was strictly business. Business? The word came out like venom. You think watching your father die clutching bankruptcy papers is just business? I think we should take this conversation somewhere private. No. We're done having conversations. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. Asha, wait. There are things you don't understand about what happened. Things that weren't in the reports. I spun back around, fury making my vision blur at the edges. Don't you dare use my first name. Don't you dare act like we're friends after what you did to my family. I'm trying to tell you that it wasn't my decision. The acquisition was pushed through by my father and the board before I had any real authority in the company. How convenient. It's the truth. Your truth. Not mine. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Then June did something I didn't expect. He sat back down and buried his face in his hands. You're right, he said, his voice muffled. You're absolutely right to hate me. The admission caught me off guard. I'd been prepared for corporate doublespeak, not raw honesty. I'd been trying to find a way to make amends for what Han Sol did to your family, he continued. I've been funding small tech startups anonymously, hoping to, I don't know, balance the scales somehow. Anonymous funding? June looked up at me, and I saw something broken in his expression. KL Investments. I've been tracking promising Nigerian entrepreneurs and providing startup capital. No strings attached. No interference. My blood turned to ice water. KL Investments was funding my new company. The mysterious investor who'd appeared out of nowhere with exactly the capital I needed to rebuild. Who'd asked for nothing in return except progress reports. You, I whispered. You're KL. I never knew it was you until today. The proposals came through third parties, and I never requested personal details about the entrepreneurs. I just wanted to help rebuild what we'd torn down. I felt like I was drowning in implications. Every meeting, every business decision, every small victory I'd celebrated had been tainted by guilt money from the man who destroyed everything I'd loved. How long have you known who I was? I demanded. How long have you known who I was? I demanded. Since you said your name in the cafe. But I suspected, there was something familiar about your determination. Your refusal to give up. Is that why you helped me today? Guilt? No. His answer was immediate and fierce. I helped you because someone was threatening you, and that was unacceptable. Even though you didn't know who I was? Even though. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. This doesn't change anything, I said finally. Your money, your guilt, your father's decisions. None of it brings my father back. I know. And it doesn't make us friends. I know that too. But even as I said the words, I was remembering the way he'd held me in the cafe. The protection in his arms, the certainty in his voice when he'd said I was safe. Have you ever felt that moment when everything you believe just shatters? When your heart knows something before your mind catches up? Tell me in the comments, because right now, I need to know I'm not the only one who's been this afraid. The cafe door chimed, and I looked up to see a younger man approaching our table. He had June's bone structure but none of his controlled composure. His eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Brother," the newcomer said, his English heavily accented. "You didn't tell me you were meeting with Miss Williams." June went rigid. "Min June. What are you doing here?" Following up on our conversation about the Nigerian project. Min June's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Though I see you've moved beyond professional interest." The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. The way my stalker had seemed to know my schedule. The expensive clothes he wore. The confidence with which he'd followed me across the city. "You," I breathed, staring at Min June, "you're the one who's been following me." Min June's smile widened. "Following is such an ugly word. I prefer researching." "Researching?" June's voice was deadly quiet. "What exactly have you been researching about Miss Williams?" "Everything. Her schedule, her apartment building, her favorite coffee shop. Her morning runs through the park. Very dedicated, our Miss Williams. Very predictable." The world tilted sideways. My stalker wasn't some random obsessive stranger. He was June's brother, using company resources to track me like prey. "You used Han Sol's security network to monitor her," June said, understanding flooding his features. "That's how you knew where to find her." "Among other resources. Did you know she visits her father's grave in Lagos every year on the anniversary of his death?" "Very touching. Very vulnerable." I thought I might throw up. The violation felt complete, total. Every private moment, every grief-stricken decision, laid bare for this man's entertainment. "Min June," June's voice carried a warning that made the temperature in the room drop. "You will stop this immediately." "Stop what?" "Research? Due diligence? She's been trying to infiltrate our company for months, brother. Someone needs to keep track of potential threats." "She's not a threat." "No." Min June's laugh was cruel. "Then why is she here? Why is she building a competitor company with mysteriously generous funding? Why is she asking questions about our acquisition history?" June looked at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized the full scope of what I'd been planning. "You came here for revenge," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I answered, because there was no point in lying anymore. "I came here to destroy Han Sol Industries the same way you destroyed my family." The admission hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Min June clapped slowly, mockingly. "At least she's honest about her intentions. Unlike some people in this family." "Get out," June said to his brother, his voice flat and dangerous. "I don't think so. This conversation is just getting interesting." But June was already standing, already moving. When he spoke again, his voice carried the kind of authority that built corporate empires. "You will leave this cafe immediately. You will delete every file you have on Miss Williams. And you will never, ever contact her again." "Or what?" "Or I will remove you from the company permanently and make sure every business contact in Seoul knows exactly why." The threat landed like a physical blow. Min June's face went white, then red with rage. "You would destroy our family's legacy for her?" "Our family's legacy is already destroyed if this is how we conduct business." Min June looked between us, calculating. Then his gaze settled on me with naked hatred. "This isn't over, Miss Williams. Justice works both ways." He turned and walked out, leaving June and me staring at each other across the wreckage of everything we thought we knew. "Asha," June said softly. "I am so sorry." I was shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from rage so pure it felt like fire in my veins. "Your brother has been stalking me for weeks. Using your company's resources." "I didn't know. I swear to you, I had no idea." "But you know now." Yes. And? June's jaw tightened. And he'll face the consequences. I'll make sure of it. For the first time since I'd learned his identity, I believed him. But belief wasn't enough. Not anymore. I need to go, I said, gathering my things with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Asha, please. Let me drive you home. It's not safe. Nothing about this is safe, I cut him off. Nothing about you is safe. I walked away without looking back, but I could feel his eyes on me until I turned the corner. And for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't sure who the real enemy was anymore. 3 days of silence stretched between June and me like an ocean. I sat in my tiny soul apartment, staring at financial documents that no longer made sense. Every number on every page was tainted by the knowledge that my anonymous investor was the son of the man who destroyed my father. My phone buzzed constantly. Missed calls from June, text messages I deleted without reading. Even flowers delivered to my door that I threw away without opening the card. But it was the silence that was killing me. The space where my certainty used to live. I'd come to Seoul with a plan. Rebuild my company, infiltrate Han Seoul's network, expose their corrupt practices, and watch their empire crumble. Simple. Clean. Righteous. Now nothing felt simple anymore. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Another message from KL Investments requesting a progress update on my startup. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I opened a reply window and stared at the blank screen for 20 minutes before typing 2 words. I know. The response came within an hour. Can we talk? Please. Jay. I closed the laptop and walked to my window. Seoul stretched out below me, millions of lights in the darkness. Somewhere out there, June was probably sitting in his glass tower, wondering if I was going to destroy everything he'd built. The thought should have brought me satisfaction. Instead, it just made me tired. My phone rang. Not June this time, but a number I didn't recognize. Miss Williams? The voice was formal, professional. This is Detective Park from Seoul Metropolitan Police. We have Min June in custody on stalking charges. We need you to come in and give a statement. The relief hit me like a physical force. He's arrested? Yes, ma'am. His brother provided us with extensive evidence of the harassment, including company surveillance footage and communication records. June had kept his word. His own brother, and he'd handed him over to the police without hesitation. Miss Williams? Will you come in tomorrow morning? Yes, I said quietly. I'll be there. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between the two. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. Asha? June's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept in days. The police called. They said you turned in your brother. A long pause. Yes. Why? Because what he did was wrong. Because you deserved protection, not persecution. I closed my eyes, remembering my father's voice. Justice is not revenge, my daughter. Justice is doing what's right, even when it costs you everything. June, I said carefully. I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Anything. Did you know about the hostile takeover before it happened? Did you have any say in what your company did to mine? The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. No, he said finally. I was studying abroad when the acquisition happened. MBA program in London. I came back to find it was already done, already destroying lives. My father died 6 months later, and I inherited a company built on decisions I never would have made. Something in his voice made me believe him. The pain was too raw, too real to be manufactured. That's when you started KL Investments? That's when I started trying to fix what couldn't be unfixed. And when you met me today, when you realized who I was, I realized that the universe had given me a chance to face what my family had done. To apologize to the person who deserved it most. I thought about the business cards sitting on my desk. About the company I was building with his guilt money. About the choice between destruction and creation. I want to meet, I said. Tomorrow, after I give my statement to the police. Are you sure? No. But I'm tired of running from this. Where? I looked out at the Seoul skyline, at the city that had become my battlefield and my refuge. Your office. I want to see the place where the decisions were made. The next afternoon, I stood in the marble lobby of Seoul Industries, watching elevator numbers climb toward the executive floor. When the doors opened, June was waiting. He looked like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled, his hair slightly mussed. But his eyes were clear and direct. Thank you for coming, he said as I stepped into his office. It was everything I'd imagined. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Awards and accolades lining the walls. The kind of space built to intimidate and impress. This is where your father made the decision to destroy my family, I said, running my hand along the conference table. Yes. And this is where you decided to try to make amends. Yes. I turned to face him, this man who represented everything I'd lost and everything I was trying to rebuild. I have a proposition for you. June's eyebrows rose slightly. I'm listening. I want to partner with Seoul Industries. Not as a subsidiary, not as an acquisition target. As an equal partner. Asha. Let me finish. I want to build something together that honors what my father created while acknowledging what your father destroyed. A joint venture that proves Nigerian innovation and efficiency can work with traditional business structures. June was quiet for a long moment, processing. You're talking about forgiveness, he said finally. I'm talking about transformation. For both of us. And the revenge? The plan to destroy Seoul? I smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. Revenge would be tearing down what you've built. Transformation would be building something better together. The board will resist. There are people who remember the Williams acquisition as a success story. Then we'll have to prove them wrong. June walked to his window, looking out at the city spread below us. There's something else you should know, he said without turning around. About KL Investments. What about it? The initials. They don't stand for what you think. I waited. KL Kemi Lagos. Your father's middle name and the city where Williams Tech was born. I found it in the old acquisition files. The words hit me like a gentle punch to the chest. All this time, June had been honoring my father's memory without even knowing I was the beneficiary. You named your investment fund after my father? I named it after the man whose dreams we crushed. I wanted every check I wrote to remind me of the cost of careless ambition. I stared at him, this complicated man who'd somehow become the answer to a question I'd been afraid to ask. June, I said softly. He turned around, and I saw hope and fear warring in his expression. Yes? I think we're going to build something amazing. The smile that spread across his face was worth every moment of uncertainty I'd endured. Does this mean you forgive me? I thought about my father, about justice and revenge, about the difference between destroying and creating. This means I choose to move forward. With you. Sometimes the person who destroys your old life is the one who helps you build a better new one. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, but about refusing to let it define your future. And sometimes, when you kiss a stranger to escape one danger, you walk straight into something far more transformative than anything you were running from. Have you ever had to forgive someone who changed your life forever? Tell me in the comments, because healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens when we choose connection over separation, creation over destruction, and hope over fear.